Welcome back. We are continuing to dive into Joe Flom's story of the outlier, especially with the three lessons from him. Let's jump right in. We start with a strange phrase, Mary got a quarter. It might sound confusing right now, but don't worry. By the end of this chapter, you'll understand what it means and why it's important to the story. Just keep it in the back of your mind as we begin. So, who was Joe Flom? He was the son of poor Jewish immigrants in Brooklyn. His father made shoulder pads for dresses, and his family struggled to make ends meet. They were so poor that they moved every year just to get 1 month of free rent. But despite those challenges, Joe grew up to build a powerful legal career and became one of the most respected lawyers in the world. It's an incredible story. A boy from a poor family worked hard, overcame many challenges, and built an amazing career. But Joe's success wasn't only about talent and determination. His story also shows how opportunities and timing can shape a person's path. The story we usually hear is powerful, but it doesn't tell the whole picture. To truly understand how Joe Flom became so successful, we need to look beyond his individual achievements and examine the world around him. His story was shaped not only by who he was, but also by the opportunities and circumstances that helped him along the way. Let's quickly follow Joe's journey. He was born into a poor family during the Great Depression. He excelled at a top high school and later convinced Harvard Law School to accept him, even though he didn't have a college degree. But after graduation, he faced a major obstacle. The most prestigious law firms refused to hire him because he was seen as an outsider. As a result, he joined a small, little-known firm. From that unlikely starting point, he went on to change the legal profession in ways few people could have imagined. And this is where the story becomes even more interesting. Joe Flom's success didn't happen despite his background. It happened, in many ways, because of it. The challenges he faced, including poverty, discrimination, and the time period in which he grew up, ended up creating opportunities that others didn't see. What looked like disadvantages at first would later become some of his greatest strengths. Let's look at the first major lesson from Joe Flom's story. Being an outsider may have seemed like a disadvantage at first, but it actually gave him a unique advantage. Because he was rejected by the established law firms, he was pushed toward opportunities that others ignored, and those opportunities would eventually help him achieve extraordinary success. In the 1940s and 1950s, the top law firms in New York were very exclusive. They were known as white shoe firms and usually hired people from wealthy families, prestigious schools, and the backgrounds they preferred. Many talented Jewish lawyers were turned away, no matter how qualified they were. Joe Flom faced the same discrimination. As a result, he and many others joined smaller firms that couldn't afford to be as selective and had to take on whatever work was available. The type of work these prestigious firms avoided turned out to be very important. They preferred what they saw as respectable legal work, such as taxes and corporate finance. More complicated cases, especially corporate takeovers and major lawsuits, were considered less desirable. When those cases appeared, they were often passed on to the smaller firms. As a result, lawyers like Joe Flom gained experience in areas that the larger firms ignored. Then, everything changed in the 1970s. The financial world became more competitive, and companies began fighting harder for growth and control. Suddenly, corporate takeovers were no longer considered unimportant work. They became a major part of the business world and involved billions of dollars. The very type of legal work that large firms had once avoided became some of the most valuable and influential work in the profession. When this major change took place, Joe Flom was ready for it. While many lawyers had spent years focusing on more traditional areas of law, Flom had spent 2 decades working on corporate takeovers and proxy fights. He had developed skills and experience that very few others possessed. As the demand for this type of legal work grew, his expertise became incredibly valuable. What once seemed like a disadvantage had placed him in exactly the right position at the right time. Joe Flom also benefited from something he could never have planned or controlled: the timing of his birth. His success was shaped not only by his hard work and experience, but also by the era in which he grew up. This leads to our second lesson: the powerful role that timing can play in a person's life. To understand this idea, let's look at a father and son, Maurice Janklow and his son Mort. Both were talented Jewish lawyers in New York, but their careers turned out very differently. Maurice struggled for much of his life because he entered the workforce during the Great Depression, when jobs and opportunities were scarce. Mort, however, was born in the 1930s and began his career during a time of economic growth and expanding opportunities. The key difference wasn't talent, it was the generation they belonged to. This chart helps explain why timing mattered so much. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, birth rates dropped sharply, creating what economists call a demographic trough, a period when fewer children were born. Joe Flom and Mort Janklow were born during this unusually small generation. As they grew older, they faced less competition for schools, jobs, and professional opportunities than larger generations before or after them. Being part of a smaller generation gave Joe Flom advantages that most people never notice. The schools he attended were less crowded, allowing students to receive more attention and support. Many highly educated people became teachers during the Great Depression because other jobs were hard to find, giving students access to exceptional educators. Later, there was also less competition for college admissions and professional careers. In many ways, Joe's generation benefited from opportunities that were available simply because there were fewer people competing for them. Now, let's look at the final piece of the puzzle, the third lesson from Joe Flom's story. This lesson focuses on the jobs their parents had. For many families like Joe's, those jobs were connected to one particular industry, and that connection would end up shaping opportunities for the next generation in important ways. Unlike many other immigrant groups, Eastern European Jews often arrived with skills suited for city life. For generations, they had been restricted from owning land, so many worked as tailors, hat makers, and clothing merchants. When they came to New York, those skills were in high demand because the city was rapidly becoming a center of the clothing industry. Their experience matched the needs of the time, placing them in a strong position to build new opportunities for themselves and their families. One example is the story of Louis and Regina Borgenicht, who had recently arrived in New York. One day, Louis noticed that no one was selling ready-made aprons for children. That evening, Regina sewed 40 aprons, and by the next day, Louis had sold every one of them. Their success came from more than hard work. They spotted an opportunity, created a product, and found customers who wanted it. Experiences like this taught many immigrant families valuable lessons about business, problem solving, and taking advantage of new opportunities. Although the garment industry was difficult, it offered something very important: meaningful work. Many workers had a level of independence because they ran their own small businesses or made their own decisions. The work also required creativity, problem solving, and careful thinking. Most importantly, there was a clear connection between effort and reward. The more time and energy people invested in their work, the more successful they could become. These experiences helped shape the values and skills they passed on to their children. And this may be the most important lesson of all. The children of these workers grew up watching their parents create opportunities through hard work, confidence, and problem solving. Those lessons shaped how they saw the world. That brings us back to "Mary got a quarter." The phrase came from a lawyer whose immigrant mother was a union organizer. She taught him that persuasion and determination could open doors that seemed closed, a skill that proved invaluable in his legal career. So, let's put everything together. By now, we can see a clear pattern. The most successful New York lawyers of this era were not shaped by talent alone. Their backgrounds, opportunities, and timing all played important roles. Together, these factors created the blueprint for success. The recipe for success had three key ingredients. First, being an outsider pushed you toward opportunities that others ignored. Second, being born in the 1930s meant growing up at a time with less competition and more opportunities. Third, having parents who did meaningful work helped teach valuable lessons about initiative, problem solving, and hard work. Joe Flom had all three of these advantages, which helped set the stage for his remarkable success. And the strongest evidence is that this pattern wasn't unique to Joe Flom. Consider the founding partners of the law firm Wachtell Lipton. Many were born around 1930, came from Jewish immigrant families, and had parents who worked in the garment industry. Their backgrounds closely matched the same pattern we've seen throughout this chapter. This wasn't just one person's success story, it was a pattern that appeared again and again. In the end, Joe Flom's story shows that success is about more than individual talent. It is also shaped by opportunities, timing, and the circumstances we inherit. The world around him provided a unique set of advantages, and he was able to make the most of them. His story encourages us to look beyond hard work alone and consider how our own generation, culture, and experiences may be creating opportunities for us as well. In the next video, we are going to explore more of the story Outlier. I hope to see you there. If you'd like more personalized feedback, writing support, and discussion sessions, they're available with me or with our selected tutors. All the details are here.